What's up, BZBGEAR fans? My name is Matt, one of the videographers from BZBGEAR. Today we're going to be covering a little bit of a different topic, and that's going to be NDI. And joining me today to cover some NDI is going to be my good friend Chris Graham from the office over in California. How you doing?
Good. What's happening, Matt? How you doing? How's Texas for you?
It's good. It's hot and it's dry. So funny you asked that. I guess I just got a phone call from somebody trying to get into the little complex where my house is, and we have a cornfield out front, and I guess that's all dried up, and I guess there was a fire or something, so they blocked the road off. So that's pretty much the only
Oh
way to get
man.
in here, and that's blocked off. So
So you really didn't escape California much, basically,
no,
is what you're
no,
saying,
not
because you
as
still
much.
have to deal with the fires.
Yeah, all the summer fires. You gotta love
Yeah, I
those,
know
right?
that very well. Oh yeah. Definitely used to it. I've lived in the mountains for many years before, and fires are no fun, but luckily it sounds like it was just a field fire, so a lot easier to deal with than the old California forest fires, that's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one thing's for sure, even though it's been a little bit dry here, and that's a very real risk, is the drought um, stuff.
So I got
But
one
at
question
least the
though.
air's better. I can tell you that much.
Yeah, right. I've got a question for you. While you've been in Texas, since you moved there, have you seen this guy?
No, I have yet to see Walker, Texas Ranger. More specifically, I definitely haven't seen Chuck Norris.
Yeah, you haven't seen Walker, man, then you haven't seen Texas. You need to go find Walker.
No, I've seen a lot of Border Patrol though. They're out here like crazy.
Oh yeah. It's rough down there. Those people are going through a lot with that. It's pretty scary for them. So hopefully everyone stays safe out there and things go as good as they can for you
Yeah.
guys. So anyway, well, what's today's topic, Matt?
So today, like I said, we're going to talk a little bit about NDI, specifically like just kind of an overview of everything NDI. So I guess I'll just start off. So NDI, if you don't know what it is, stands for Network Device Interface. Um, you can think of NDI as almost two parts. You have your NDI tools, which is going to kind of be like a suite designed to help you control broadcasts over a network. And then you have
Mhm.
your NDI as in it's a video delivery process. So you can think of it, there's full bandwidth NDI, which is going to be like 160, 150 megabits per second for each stream at about 1080p 60, I believe. Then you have NDI HX, which is going to be kind of their offering to take, it's to take load off of your network essentially. So NDI HX is more of kind of like a consumer, prosumer type deal where if you don't have maybe a 10 gig network or something along those lines to actually support the infrastructure that NDI full bandwidth would need, that would be where that comes in. So that's kind of the general gist of what NDI is. You have your tool set, which is going to be your software based side, and then you have your actual video delivery side, which is going to be either NDI full bandwidth or NDI HX. And then to take it a step further, there's also some hardware solutions that NDI offers as well. So one of their big things is going to be the NDI Tricaster and the Tricaster Mini or the Tricaster Mini 4K. Basically, what those are is it's kind of like a hardware-based solution to streamline your production. So a Tricaster is, think of it like a desktop computer, except you can run literally everything you need out of it. You have graphics
Yeah.
suites. You have like really awesome switchboards, everything you basically need. You can run a broadcast production out of an NDI Tricaster. I
It's
kind of
it's
wish I had
basically
one to do this, but it's pretty cool.
it's basically like a gamer's computer for a gamer, but for a broadcaster, essentially.
Yeah, pretty much. We had the pleasure to have a booth over at the BizRT group, specifically in the NDI Pavilion um, at NAB, and so we got to play around a lot with the NDI TriCaster 4K Mini, and that was a whole lot of fun. I mean,
I remember
it's
that. I was really
packed
jealous
full
to
with
play with.
features.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that thing was really cool. So, we have a lot of people out there. I work in the sales side. I do the technical side sometimes, and it seems like there's a lot of installers, dealers out there that are very new to broadcasting in general. We know a lot of dealers out there do conference rooms, for instance. Little different animal versus the live streaming side. And I think sometimes when you mention to dealers that aren't as diversified in the broadcasting world or terminology, they get a little shy when it comes to NDI, that whole word. Like, what is this NDI thing? And maybe not totally certain how to sell it or what specific applications it really works for versus like a hardware setup. Maybe you can jump into that a little bit as far as what you think the best applications essentially would be for NDI.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's actually funny you mentioned that because NDI, when you look at NDI, it's definitely a production centric. At least that's what it looks like, a production centric um, tool to essentially use because there you have tally control, you have full control over the cameras, basically all of that stuff, depending on what type of version of NDI you're running. But NDI is really flexible. There's a lot of stuff that you can do with it. For example, like you mentioned, conference rooms and whatnot. You can easily set up NDI to essentially take, like, for example, a PTZ camera and have that be showing up as a separate like webcam interface for something that you need to do as far as like kind of conferencing is concerned. I know we've done that for a few clients. I believe we've set up kind of suites for them where they've been able to have like a very almost niche setup where they need to have a Zoom that they can like have different inputs that they can flip through,
Yeah.
and they've been able to do that through NDI. So there's a lot
Well,
of
yeah.
flexibility with it.
It was nice that those conference platforms eventually went to that because before you couldn't do that. And I think it was only like 6 months ago or so I recall that, they didn't even have that option. So obviously NDI is really taking off and getting more flexible and offered in more applications, more platforms out there. One of the simple sides, I was an integrator for, a good 17 years or so. And I can appreciate from the installation point of view, I'm running one single cable and it's a Cat 6
Absolutely.
typically. So from an installation standpoint, it's going to save money on the quote because you don't have to run, expensive active optical HDMI cables or SDI cables with converters. So there's a lot of benefits from the guy who's in the field installing this stuff as far as saving time, saving the client money on the cabling, because we all know Cat cable, Ethernet cable is very inexpensive in general compared to other cabling. So I can appreciate that side of it for sure. And plus it powers it up. So you don't even need an outlet. You power that guy up with a PoE network switch or injector and you're like ready to go. So pretty cool technology they came up with. And of course there was always RTSP before. Some of these dealers out there that work with RTSP for surveillance and whatnot. Obviously, if you've worked with RTSP, you see there's a lot of latency, as well as audio issues. You're gonna have audio issues with RTSP versus NDI and control. There's no control over RTSP. NDI is going to give you that ability to control the camera. So you're going to power the camera up. You're going to be able to stream your video. You're going to be able to control it. You're going to be able to send audio over it. It's just amazing what you can get over one little cable.
Yeah, and that's kind of like the whole idea behind the NDI is like, there's a lot of solutions that were maybe already even existed to deliver video over a network. But like you said, especially in that case, latency is a really big thing. So that's kind of like the real big thing behind NDI is number one. They focus a whole lot on like reducing as much visual artifacting as possible from compression. So
Mm-hmm.
they want to make sure that it's um, they're careful with this word specifically, but they want to make sure that it looks as close to what it should look like as possible,
Yeah.
without
And
any
if you
sort
move the
of
joystick
weird.
controller to
Yeah,
the left, you don't have to like hit and wait. It
yeah,
literally goes
and
as
that's the
you
other
move
thing too. Besides just making sure that it has very minimal artifacting, is they want to make sure that it has very low latency. So um,
for
that's kind of
control.
one thing that happened with NDI HX. When NDI HX first hit the scene, I believe in 2016. I could be completely wrong on that date. So check the video that's just releasing just about in a few
Fact
minutes,
check you.
and you'll be able to see the whole timeline and kind of the history of NDI that I did. But when that first released, latency, like, while it did cut down a whole lot on the bandwidth requirement of full bandwidth NDI, latency wasn't quite where they wanted it to be. So with HX2, that was another improvement they made. They wanted to make it even less latency heavy. And now with the release of NDI 5.0, which is like the software side of it, everything, they've also coincided that with the release of NDI HX3. And NDI HX3 is a really, really cool system because beforehand, basically the way NDI HX kind of worked was NDI themselves didn't have a whole lot of say on what cameras were going to be NDI HX. It was kind of something that you could put into your camera and you were behind everything. But NDI HX3 is mostly going to be, it's a premium kind of backed system with NDI, where NDI is basically saying, hey, if you want an NDI HX3 camera in your lineup, you need to send it to us. We're going to take a look at it. We're going to test it. We're going to make sure that it meets our standards. We're going to make sure that it's under 100 milliseconds of latency,
That's
which is
crazy.
insane at 1080p.
Yeah.
Um, and we've also bumped up the bandwidth a little bit too. So NDI HX2, for example, I believe it was about 20 to 50 megabits per second. And then NDI HX3 is now up to 80 megabits per second. So not only are you
Yeah.
getting the lower latency, you're getting a better picture quality as well. Plus, on top of that, they're giving you more flexibility to decide what you want to tailor more towards. So NDI HX3 is going to be a big thing.
Yeah, it seems great. And some of you may know who are watching this, whether live or recorded, we do have a new camera that we've talked about a few times. We're really proud of the BG Adamo. It's official now that we are going to have HX3 on the BG Adamo. So this camera's got the latest and greatest of everything. You got the 12G SDI, the HDMI, USB 2.0 or 3.0, both connections there. Micro SD slot. Man, the thing is just feature packed. Tally lights. So we're really excited to be able to do HX3. It looks like our timing on this guy was perfect.
Yeah, I think that's a big draw for a lot of people is kind of the ability to have an HX3 based camera, but also a camera that, like, the Adamo is just feature packed. So like tally lights, it has like, there's a whole lot of stuff that it has, and a lot of cameras in this price range absolutely don't have.
And
Just
it's pretty with the lights. I like the tally lights. They look really cool
well,
on it.
and
Kind
the
of
really
like
cool
Star
thing
Wars.
about the tally lights too, and it being HX3, is you have the metadata going through NDI itself to be able to control the tally lights. So
Yeah. Now, just to avoid the confusion out there for our clients, the dealers, integrators out there, you see a 4K at 60 hertz camera, you see HX3. Obviously, you automatically assume this is going to stream 4K at 60 hertz over HX3. I'll be honest, that was my first thought. I'm like, oh, HX3, 4K at 60 hertz over. Can you explain that a little bit? What are our restraints on that? I mean, is that possible or?
yeah, well, first of all, like Mr. Cruz was asking, can it air fry? I think that's going to be the first restriction there. I don't think you're going to be able to air fry anything with it. But to go on with the actual the kind of constraints of NDI HX3. So when I talked to the guys over at the BZBGEAR group, they were really great at giving me like a lot of information that I didn't necessarily have yet. But one thing to keep in mind with NDI HX3 is it's basically it's a standardization process essentially. So the standard for NDI HX3 is going to be streaming at 1080p, minimal artifacting, and also retaining under 100 milliseconds of latency. So that's going to be the standard. Now, they let me know that, hey, NDI HX3 does not refer to 4K. However, that's not to say that it's not possible. So it's possible. The thing is, a lot of manufacturers aren't necessarily interested in getting a HX3 camera certified at 4K or whatever. And I don't think the engineers are either, mostly because the amount of bandwidth that you need. So you're looking at about 150 megabits per second for a 1080p 60 full bandwidth NDI stream. Like NDI high bandwidth.
That's with control and audio, because you always got to take that in consideration.
That's just for the stream itself, right? So obviously there's other things that you need to factor into that, but just for the stream itself, it's about 150 megabits per second. So
okay, so 4K,
higher, yeah, if you were to go 4K with NDI HX, you're looking at about 180 megabits per second.
Yeah,
so that was my understanding. So that's more than that's more than your actual full bandwidth.
So essentially, you're not saying that, I mean, technically they're not saying HX3 supports 4K, but technically they're not saying it doesn't. They just haven't certified anything yet as far as that goes. They're mostly worried about the network a little bit and the restraints of the networks and the setup of the network, it sounds like.
Yeah, I mean, the whole goal behind NDI HX3 is they want it to be they want it to be almost like a premium thing, and they also want to make sure that when you get an HX3 camera, like, you know what you're getting. So there's no ifs, ands, or buts. It's signed off by NDI themselves. It meets the standards. So that could be a problem previously with some of the previous things, because NDI HX was almost something that somebody could just get and put on their own cameras, right? So it's so like a hardware and it's a hardware-based constraint, and it's also a standard that has to be met with that hardware constraint.
Yeah, because otherwise you could have like all these other companies out there that aren't really going through the proper processes or allocating the proper chipsets or whatnot to support this technology.
Correct.
Just throwing it on there. People are getting upset about NDI HX3. It's not working the way it is supposed to, and it's because it's going on products that aren't technically, it's not supposed to go on because they don't have the proper hardware in there to support it. And so that's what the purpose is, as usual, for a certification, such as HD-based-T. A lot of you audio video guys out there obviously know HD-based-T certifications. Similar type thing a little bit, where, just making sure the standards are reliable and solid.
Correct, and that's another thing that I should probably mention in regards to like HX2 versus HX3, because it is a hardware-based requirement too. The stance for NDI currently is, hey, if you have an NDI HX2 camera, we can't upgrade that to HX3. So HX3 cameras are purpose-built. They have to make sure that it's meeting the standards because of chipsets and all that stuff. So when you're talking about a camera meeting these stringent criteria that NDA is set forth, the hardware side does have to back that up. So you can't just take an old camera and be like, oh, hey, we're going to put HX3 on it. It's just not going to work.
And I don't think it's so much the technical side that it can work. I think it's the logistical business side of it. They just don't want it to happen because, again, you can end up with cameras that shouldn't have it on there. They're not spec'd out properly. So I got to say, though, it would have been really nice in that sense if it could be upgradable. Or what one of my clients, Nigel from New Zealand, brought up, one of our distributors now, was like, man, can you guys like put this in your camera where you could actually select which NDI compression you want, NDI HX2 or NDI HX3, in case you end up with a bandwidth issue or you have secondary cameras that you want to have lower bandwidth because the shot's not as important. And I was like, man, that would be cool. And unfortunately, we got shut down on that one because they won't be able to upgrade it and so forth. But
I don't know how it all exactly works, but that's one of the cool things about NDI HX3, for example. So they wanted to make sure flexibility was a big thing because they recognize, sometimes networks can be a little spotty, and sometimes things might need to just have a little bit of an adjustment, right? So I believe it's anywhere from like GOP1 to GOP6. GOP just refers to group of pictures. It's essentially just it's a compression thing. I'm not
Yeah.
going to get too deep into it because even I don't know all that much about it. I just know how it works, or that it does its
So
job really. So you have your own flexibility to kind of set that a little bit.
okay, that's cool. So going back a little bit to our application side of things, we get customers that call us. Some people are very knowledgeable. Some people are not so knowledgeable. It's brand new to them. They're trying to figure out what cameras they need, what type of setup they need. And a lot of this, when, dealers are out there basically qualifying clients saying, what do you want? The main key point that you almost have to hit right out of the gate, from my experience, is what software are you planning on using for live streaming? And what type of person is going to be running the show? Is the person very techie, savvy? They like using software, they're familiar. Is there a backup person that's going to be able to use this software in case that person's sick one day? Because what I find is a lot of clients gravitate towards hardware switchers who are less knowledgeable, in the sense they just say, hey, I just need a button to push. I'm not there all the time. Someone else has got to back me up. For instance, like a house of worship, for example. So that's something to determine when you're asking your clients. Like, first thing is, who's running the production? What's their technical background? And what do they prefer? And some people do both. Some people do a hardware switcher. They use NDI as backup, maybe for different situations, especially if they're mobile. But that's a key qualifying question I find is very important, because a lot of times customers skip right over the guts of it, which is like, how's this going to work? Like, sure, you got a hardware camera, you got a hardware joystick, but how are you going to make this work? And not all of them understand that. So when you're referring NDI to a client, it's important to understand that they're network savvy. You're going to need a managed network switch, typically, is what we recommend. I mean, you don't have to, but if you're going to run more than one NDI camera, two NDI cameras, you essentially want to create a separate segment, like a separate neighborhood, to isolate
Mm-hmm.
those away from all the network traffic. Because if you're in a house of worship, for instance, on a Sunday, live stream's working great, NDI is awesome, all of a sudden, like 100 people show up, they start streaming videos, jumping on your guest network or jumping on the network, and you're going to end up with latency problems, even freezing frames. So one of the critical points to selling NDI, besides qualifying the software side of the technical person running it, is the fact of the bandwidth, of course, and how's the network set up there. I mean, we get people that call and they're like, I have a hotspot, and I'm using this. And then you have people that have actual service providers with fiber. So when qualifying customers out there, dealers, make sure that these people have the right setup for network or capability. Some people are way out in the middle of nowhere, and it's really slow if you're out in the country. So just something to think about when it comes to NDI side. And
Yeah, absolutely.
you can and what about the Tricasters? So the other side of that is, Matt knows much better than I do. He's got a lot of time on it, but the Tricaster is kind of that piece that is a substitute for the hardware, right?
Yeah, I mean, so if you got somebody who kind of prefers like a hardware based solution, the TriCaster is basically it's a hardware based solution because depending on the version you get, right, you can have your Switch board, you can have your joystick controller on it as well. So like, there's a lot that you can do with that, but it also integrates directly in with the software side as well. So if you kind of need more of an all in one solution, really, it's great for something like a mobile control room. A lot of guys that I talked to at NAB, they were looking for something to kind of throw in almost a trailer in their truck, um,
Yeah.
so that way they can get around and do sports
Mm-hmm.
broadcasts. So
Yeah,
it's really
mobile
great for
guys
that.
love the NDI. Mobile guys really like NDI because, again, it's one cable they run. So if they're setting
Mm-hmm.
cameras up on tripods for a wedding or an event, they don't have to worry about running multiple cables, which takes up time and people step on them and whatnot. Cat 6 is pretty durable, so if someone does step on it, chances are you're fine, even if a cart ran over it. There's different shieldings of Cat 5e, Cat 6. That you can get. So if you need a tougher cable, there are cables out there available to, that can be ran over essentially. Not recommended, but it can.
Yeah, and I mean, like it's pretty scalable too as far as the TriCaster is concerned. they have a whole lot of different offerings for the Tricaster and the actual not components, but the peripherals that you can get for it. So
Yeah.
it's really scalable. So if you need something really small, you can get something pretty small. If you need something a lot larger to kind of fill out like an actual control room, you can do that. So it's very scalable, and just like a network, it's also scalable too, right?
Yeah,
So
it's just like again, it's like a gaming computer for a gamer, but it's a broadcasting computer for a broadcaster who's looking for a little more physical side as long as along with the software side,
mhm.
versus using a like OBS Studios program or a vMix or ProPresenter. You're pretty much 100% software. You're gonna have to use converters and so forth to get that in there. So definitely Tricaster is a really cool product. If it's in your budget, it's highly recommended for clients that are looking to run NDI, especially the more professional type setups.
Yeah, I mean, it's really cool how it works. It's a
Yeah,
production powerhouse. Like you
and
have
price wise, it's not that much more, really. I mean, I think on our Adamo, it's like $200 more per model. So we have the non NDI version and the NDI version.
as far as like getting an NDI enabled camera now, it's not that much more expensive, but
So that's kind
it's
of.
definitely worth it. But
I
like
usually
for the
recommend for if they got a few hundred extra dollars, I'm saying, hey, get the NDI version because that way you're future proof in case you decide to change locations, reinvent the wheel a little bit there. For a couple $100 more, you can get it. So, like for instance, our 12x BG Adamo starts at $27.99, or 25x is $29.99. And again, that's our 4K at 60 hertz camera. Check that out. Price wise, the thing's really geared out right, especially with the have HX3 on it now and auto tracking.
yeah, and just to touch back on the TriCaster, it really is something else. Like as far as everything that comes in it,
Yeah.
you're looking at like uh, it's just crazy. So like integrated video servers, which let you playback, replay, live edit without any additional hardware. You have
Mm-hmm.
creative capabilities from like multi-bus mix effects, animated titles and transitions, and like you have chroma keying. Has
Yeah.
live virtual sets. You can switch from like streaming and recording in HD, 3G, and 4K UHD. So like everything that it has on it, it's a big powerhouse, and it comes
And
ready right out of the box.
and I saw something that sounds like they're working out some situations as far as being able to stream audio over the LAN. NDI and Dante are figuring things out, it sounds like. So I know I saw NDI came out with a virtual sound card essentially that will stream over IP. I don't have a whole lot of information on it. I think it's just brand new right now. So something we're probably going to be testing here shortly. I believe we have a meeting with NDI as well as Dante, so we can kind of get the understanding of how it's all going to work and figure out how it's going to work with our equipment.
Yeah, I don't know as much on the what they're doing on that audio side of things, but just from like a all-in-one broadcasting solution that's network
Mhm.
based, I don't think there's anything out there on the market right now that really does what NDI does, especially when you factor in stuff like NDI Bridge, which came out with NDI 5.0, which
Yeah.
essentially lets you control and run a broadcast across the country. Like it's expanding from just being a local area network type deal to being a wide area network. So it's kind of crazy. It's a
Yeah, it's
really
got a lot more
exciting
reliability.
software.
The reliability has gone way up. It's really good now, solid. Yeah, we're very impressed with what they've done with the technology, and just constantly seems to improve. And like Matt said, you got universal tools. We have a lot of control program type, like for mobile iOS devices. We have a PTZ control program for PCs and Macs. You got control on your web interface. You got a remote. And then if you got NDI, you got universal NDI tools.
Yeah.
Sometimes people have a mixed batch of cameras. They're adding more cameras to existing cameras, and they don't want to say, hey, you've got this app and it only works with your cameras, and then I've got this other app that only works with these guys' cameras. So in that situation, NDI tools is pretty much the way to go for an
Yeah.
app.
Yeah. Speaking of apps and mobile stuff, like one of the actual really cool things about NDI is you can even take your phone, your iPhone, and download an app,
Yeah.
the NDI app, and you can literally turn your phone. Let me see, where's my iPhone actually? I can. I can turn this thing right here into a
Yeah,
mobile
and,
camera that
yeah,
actually works on the NDI stream. So
and
it's
you can
really
buy
cool everything you can
decoders,
do.
right? You can get decoders. So there's NDI decoding tools that basically can go behind a monitor. So if you had a video wall or a big TV somewhere displayed for the audience, you could actually buy an NDI decoder, and it would decode that signal as long as it's compatible with that same type of HX. HX2 and HX3 are backwards compatible too, right? Like HX3 goes to HX2. You can have a mixed environment, from what I understood.
Um, I'm not sure if you could like take an HX3 camera and make it HX2, but as
No,
far as
no,
I
no.
know, as far as I know, you could have an HX3 camera and an HX2 camera on the same network, and it should work.
Yeah, yeah, they can work together. I remember reading about that. It was one of our concerns. So forwards and backwards, so you can have different, whether it's HX2 or HX3, they can work in the same environment from everything I've read on there. So really
So
cool.
I think we're coming up here pretty soon to, or pretty close. We're actually over 30 minutes right now. So
I
anybody
just
have any
wanted to talk
questions
to you,
regarding
Matt.
NDI?
It's been forever, man. We
It
miss you
has
here,
been a
Matt.
while. If
Yeah,
there's any
I
questions,
don't
we'd
like
love
it.
to take a shot at answering some of them real quick.
Yeah,
In the
definitely.
meantime, we got some pretty cool cups now that
I still
I
don't have mine.
believe.
I'm stuck with Walker still.
Oh,
I'm like, I
you don't
saw
have
that.
yours yet? Come on, Chris. Come on. I believe
Every time in the
we're
morning,
looking at
I
giving
come in in
some
the
of these
morning.
away. Actually,
I come in the morning and I see them laying around, and I keep forgetting by the end of the day to grab one. So that's the last thing I'm going to do today on the end of this Friday for me. That's awesome. So yeah, if anyone's got questions, let us know. If don't have any questions now, you watch the recording at another point in time, you can always feel free to give us a call or send us an email.
leave a
We've got
comment.
Yeah, leave a comment. We're here to help you guys understand this better. I know being an audio video dealer myself for many years, I know how difficult it is for a lot of dealers to do transitions into different segments of the field. Whether it's AV over IP, we know that challenge. Broadcasting is now the new challenge, and it's not going away, guys. Like, if you're out there and you're a dealer, diversify yourself, do some broadcasting. You're already probably dabbling in conference rooms, especially if you're a commercial contractor. Conferencing's great. We actually have some great conferencing products come out. We'll talk about those later, but they're going to be amazing. But as far as the broadcasting sector goes, I can tell you there's a ton of applications between healthcare, education, houses of worship, anything from podcasters who need quick setup, studios. There's a lot of business out there, and it's not difficult. It's very simple overall to set up. It seems a little overwhelming initially, and I think what I find with some of my dealers is where they get a little intimidated is they feel like they need to understand the software that's running this stuff. And you really just have to understand the foundation of it so you can give them a show how it works and how it switches. You don't need to understand everything because technically you're not there running the shows. They typically have somebody who's actually in charge of doing the production, obviously, when they're live streaming. You just have to make sure the cameras are set up, the image quality looks good. And I always recommend to my dealers, when you guys are out there setting up these cameras, don't just set it up for default video settings. Go into that web interface, do a little bit of white balance, a little bit of iris adjustment. We have videos. Matter Videographer has set up some videos on our channel that you can actually go in and get tutorials on a couple different model cameras we have. It makes a world of difference if you take 10 minutes to set it up. Your customer is going to be astounded. So again,
Absolutely.
things that take time, and remember to put that into your time. You set up the cameras, you set up the colors and everything else, and mounting and cables. But after that, really, you're just making sure it looks good, the camera's working properly, everything's working, and then you say thank you very much, and client's happy. They've got a deal there, and they go learn the rest of the software program so they can run it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it doesn't look like we have any questions regarding any NDI. So I think that's going to wrap it up for today. NDI is a really, really deep topic. You can talk about
Yeah.
every little segment of it for a long
We could be
time,
here
but
until Saturday.
yeah, pretty much. I just hope that we gave you guys kind of a quick overview of what NDI is, what the offerings are, kind of the difference between full bandwidth and HX. So I believe that about covers it up. Make sure you guys are checking out our live streams every week for a chance at getting one of these bad boys. And have a good weekend. We'll talk to you guys later.
Definitely. Thanks, Matt. Good seeing you. And I'll talk to you later. And everybody have a great weekend. Again, give us a call. If you got any questions, sales@bzbgear.com, info@bzbgear.com. Our tech support department's always here to help as well. Thanks again. See you guys.